It's 1 o'clock and we're starting on time. A warm welcome to the council today as we move into a hybrid meeting format. With Dr. Hickey's assistance, of course, I will do my best to ensure your engagement is maximized for both in-person and virtual members. Please remember to raise your hand and identify yourself before speaking. Dr. Hickey, I'll probably ask you to be the one to acknowledge in the room, in person, hand raising, and I can take care of our virtual members. Also, sure. Kati, thank you. Kati will serve as timekeeper to ensure that we stay within the time frame allocated to our important agenda items for today. So by the end of the day today for our meeting, we will be able to clearly define the legal roles and responsibilities per the request of the council at our last meeting, including being able to communicate some of the successes and challenges from our constituents. We'll also deepen our knowledge base via the email attachments that you've received on consensus decision making. We've each experienced different levels of it, and this will level the playing field for us. We'll also take a few minutes to provide feedback on the draft guest speaker request form, which was also requested by our council members. At the end, you'll see for the good of the order, which will be a standing agenda item for future meetings, so that we have an opportunity to share successes and feedback from the field. So let's begin. Kati, would you please conduct the roll call?
Sure, thank you, Ellen. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Maureen Brummett. Dr. Michael Coyne. Dr. Margie Gillis.
Here.
Kim Healy. Here. Dr. Melissa Jenkins. Stephanie Lockhart. Dr. Tamara Lucero.
Here.
Thomas Nuccio. Fran Rabinowitz.
Here.
Bianca Rivera.
Here.
Lisa Thomas. Here. Susan Wachowski. Roll call is complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Kati. Our first order of business then is to accept the minutes of our previous meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes dated March 19th, 2024?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Gillis.
Oh, that's Kim
Second
Healy.
to this motion?
Sorry.
Oh,
It's Kim.
I
I
saw
know,
your
you know,
hands
maybe
go.
we'll do that. Yeah.
okay. Do we have a second to this motion? Thank you, Dr. Gillis. Discussion? Dr. Hickey, do you see any hands raised for discussion for our in-person members?
No, we're all set here. Thank you.
All those
We did
in
have
favor
some people
of
come in to the room. Some of our members are now here. So,
Okay,
Dr.
Kati, do you,
Go ahead.
Dr. Maureen Brummett came in. Thank you. And I did hear Lisa Thomas say that she was here. Thank you.
thank you for letting me know.
Thank you.
So then we can move to approving the minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes from March 19th, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Hearing no objection, the motion passes. Thank you.
So before we move
So-
on,
I have an issue with the February minutes. We voted on changes at our last meeting that were not made to those minutes. So if we would like to, there was issues with the way we approved them. My understanding is they should still be marked draft, and we should review the changes that were not made and the changes, I guess, that were made. So I'm not sure if we want to table that for another meeting, but you know, they're supposed to match what we vote on when we get that vote.
Dr. Hickey, we certainly could table those to respond to the question because we do have a robust agenda in that this is our a hybrid format. Sometimes it's a little hard, at least from my perspective, to see everyone here. So I'm going to suggest that we do table it for today and add that to our agenda, of course, for our May meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Schultz.
So then we are going to move forward then on the agenda to further define our roles and responsibilities as council members. And I do believe that Attorney Michael McCann is in the room. Michael serves as the Director of Legal and Governmental Affairs. So the mic is yours, so to speak.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was asked to attend this meeting, and I believe there are some questions with respect to processes and roles and responsibilities. I'm not sure if there's something in particular you would wish me to address, or could you let attorneys just talk about the whole meeting? So I don't know if there are some specifics you want me to address or not.
Well, I can add that there's been a question about the role, consultative role, and what does that mean to consult?
Well, typically in reviewing or interpreting statutory language, plain meaning applies unless it is so ambiguous that it needs to be interpreted. Consultation and what courts do is they often will look at dictionaries to determine the plain meaning. And when one looks up the word consultation, it's typically when one's seeking a consultation, they're seeking opinion, they're seeking advice, they're seeking insights. So as such, given that this is in accordance with that statutory language set forth in 10-14 GG, and also it's reiterated the consultation, the word consultation in 10-14 II, essentially, as opposed to a legislative deliberative body such as a town council or a board of education, this is a consultative body, an advisory body, and as such, pursuant to the statute, the role of the council is to provide advice, opinion, so forth and so on. And you know, if one looks at 10-14 GG subsection B, it talks about that the Center for Literary Research and Reading Success shall be under the direction of a director who shall, read into this an ellipsis, be responsible for, and then it lists overseeing the activities of the center, so forth and so on. However, it's something of a parenthetical. It says the director who shall, in consultation with the Reading Leadership Implementation Council described in subsection C of this section. So that the fact that it is set forth is something of a parenthetical. The idea it uses the word consultation when being interpreted, for a court to be interpreting this, they would see this as saying that the council is like I said, an advisory body. It is not a legislative body. It is not a deliberative body. It is an advisory body whose role is to give such advice, to consult with the director, who is Melissa, and the CSDE for purposes of implementing sections 10-14 GG through 10-14 II.
All right, thank you.
That's my role.
That was my question.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions for him while he's here? Things that have been bubbling up, either virtually or in person?
I'm just looking at the website, and it says that this group would be overseeing all activities at the center.
on more statutory language or with the respective obligations that have been imposed upon the director. The word shall with statutes are except in some circumstances is typically interpreted as a mandate. So it is mandated that the director, who again is Melissa, is responsible for the various activities. That is the controlling language, the statutory language.
Right, so she, yeah, it does say consult with us.
Yeah. It's like, you go and you consult. It's funny, when courts talk about consulting a dictionary with respect to determining what the plain meaning is before they actually use that same language. Or you're gonna go and you consult with someone about something you have going on in your own lives. So it's the idea that you go and you seek opinions, you seek advice. The opinions are not binding, the advice is not binding, you're not required to be bound by it, but it is supposed to be helpful input so that it can be, help form, okay, this is how we're seeing this, but you're giving us this advice, this opinion. Again, it's not binding upon me, but it is helpful. It provides some insights that perhaps I didn't consider. And, then you move on from that.
Oh, and I see what you're referencing. So pursuant to public act shall be under the so that would be me, under the direction of the director who shall, in consultation with you.
Right.
So that's me. I'm responsible for overseeing all the activities, facilitating communication, etc. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I paid the mediocre bucks. And are we all?
Yeah, that was great.
Anything
Thank you.
else, like the process or understanding of roles or anything?
I guess my question would be, then are we supposed to be consulted with decisions of this nature in advance of those decisions being formalized?
I don't think there's any really, that's a good question, but I don't think there's any really direct obligation to do so. I think it's just in consultation that there's no really timeline. There's no like, we cannot take a step unless we have first consulted with you. Under the statute, there should be consultation. There's no question. I mean, that's what the statute provides. Opinions and advice, so forth. It's supposed to be a collaborative type process with respect to the consultation part. Does that mean that the director of the center cannot take action without consultation? I don't think that the statute is intended to say that, because I think that it could simply say, it would have said that in more direct language, I think.
So we've been asked to provide the legislature some guidance if we felt we needed more authoritative power, I guess. And I did not have an answer for that. And I guess my only concern is that, I've been clearly unhappy with the decisions of the waiver process and not being included in it. And in the decision-making that has come since, or lack of that. So, what recourse does the council have in any of this, I guess?
Well, I think the council, again, I think, as I noted before, like a town council, board of education, something along those lines, state commission, state board, what have you, they're deliberative legislative body. They make decisions. It's up to them to make decisions. Here, the power has been vested, power, responsibility, obligation, whatever term you wish to use, has been vested by statute directly in Melissa, the director of the center. So your role is to be consulted with, as I said. So you share your opinions, but your opinions are not binding. That's not to say that your opinions are simply, yeah, okay, that's fine, thank you. We heard what you had to say. There is supposed to be a consultative process, and my understanding that's what these meetings are all about. I mean, I have not attended these meetings before, so I really don't know the substance of them. But, essentially that's my understanding as to what these meetings are, or if there are communications among you outside the meetings. Well, they have to be careful, because if you all email one another outside, that's considered by the FOI to be a meeting as well. So you have to be careful about that kind of thing. But if you feel that if you disagree with waiver, I remember you came and spoke to a public board meeting, a public session.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, I think.
Yeah. I was surprised I never heard from anybody, but.
Well,
Neither here nor there.
but I do remember that. So, you can express your concern. I remember you could express your concern about the waiver process. So, that's your opinion. And it's a valid opinion, like everyone's respective opinions are valid. But it's not binding upon it. What I'm saying, that's not binding upon the center. Simply an opinion that needs to be weighed, to be considered. Again, just form of the consultative process. But the fact that you oppose it does not necessarily prohibit it going forward.
No, understand.
Yeah.
So I have two other questions.
Sure.
And the council itself, are we independent of the center? Can we meet independently? Yes, I guess what that would lead into is, do we have the right to opine or provide, our, what we would like to see on an agenda?
Well, that's
I mean, it says council right on top.
yeah.
We don't set the agenda, and
Right. Well, no, you're asking a lot of good questions.
I'm really glad you're here, because I've been trying to get these answers for a while.
Well, it's the very next subsection, subsection C, it iterates who the members of the implementation, reading leadership implementation council are. And the first one listed is director of the center, or the director's designee. And so if you're to have a council meeting, council does include Melissa.
Sure.
So theoretically, she would be, not even theoretically, she'd be part of that meeting. Now, obviously, sometimes you have meetings and people aren't all available. But given the fact that Melissa is a member of the council, and given the fact that she is invested in subsection B of 1014 GG, with the obligation, responsibility to overseeing all activities of the center, having council meetings without Melissa would be, might be counterproductive.
I'm not suggesting that.
No, yeah.
But, like we have tried to have meetings, we have decided that we wanted to have a meeting like this, and then it was basically declined. We've asked for speakers. We have to then go through a month's process of trying to determine, who is going to be allowed, who's not going to be allowed. I mean, we were told we're not allowed to bring the public, but yet we were not even informed that you would be here, or, I guess everyone else is.
I am a public servant, but not a public. Well, let me, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know Melissa had mentioned in passing, I forgot this, but now you're saying that, reminds me, with respect to public comment. Public bodies are required to have public comment. I mean, again, most of the time I'm sorry to keep using the same phraseology, I apologize, but typically it's the legislative bodies such as school boards and town councils, municipalities that have these public comments. Because, it's the electorate, it's constituents, they come, they want to share their concerns. But sometimes there can be real downsides to public comment. And I worked with school boards for many years right in the state. And I am aware of cases that arose, federal court cases that arose out of public comment. Because they can sometimes go sideways. So essentially and you probably already know this, I apologize if you do, I don't mean to waste your time, but a lot of times what town councils and boards of ed will do is they'll say, okay, you're limited to a certain amount of time, typically 3 minutes or so, or maybe 5, you don't have that many speakers. You can only speak as to what's on the agenda, and then you have this, for example, if you let people come in and speak about everything, especially like at a local level, they may come in and say, hey, that principal of such school, God, that guy, what a jerk, and then say, well, you think we can't get into that because they have the right to be, if we're going to be talking about them, they have the right to be given prior notice, and then it gets to be all sorts of crazy. And also, very often public session comment, typically we always advise clients, and I think most of these bodies follow that anyway, they don't respond. Then when you respond to the public comment, that can sometimes get problematic because you might suddenly inadvertently even slide into viewpoint discrimination. So you say, no, we can't talk about that, and there are cases where someone would come to public comment and they criticize, and no, you can't criticize people. You can say nice things about them, but you can't criticize them. Well, that's viewpoint discrimination. Then you got a free speech claim, First Amendment, and again, we're in federal court, or you respond, oh yeah, I'm in total agreement with some people that get angry at other people. Not saying you would do that, but I just share that there are certain vicissitudes to public comment that sometimes can really outweigh their value. And with an advisory body such as this, you're not required to have public comment, and I think the potential downside or risk, let's say, could outweigh the benefit. Now, that's not to say that if the council decided they could be informed in their efforts, in your efforts, excuse me, by speaker, like a reading expert or something like that. That's different from public comment on this. That's not to say you couldn't have that in there, have that as part of the meeting or benefit from it or what have you. A public comment sometimes can make me a little twitchy, just because I've seen cases.
How would you recommend that we invite, say we wanted to invite certain reading teachers, reading specialists, superintendents, whoever?
Well, I think that'd be something that the council would have to discuss and decide whether they want to do it or not, just like you would any other action item.
And we actually have that on the agenda today. There was a draft speaker form that was sent to all the council members in the last email for us to review, so that it will be a collaborative process. And we can talk about how will we be inviting speakers in and agreeing on that process.
I'm going to volunteer one other thing, and this isn't something Melissa Drayton to be or anything, but I mentioned it in passing just a few days ago, so I thought maybe I should maybe clarify it. So I just not throwing things out there. This used to happen again with Board of Education as well. And that someone would send an email to all board members, and then in this case it'd be council members, and then someone would respond, and then suddenly there's communication. Even though it's just an email exchange, the FOI gets held to go to public meetings. And so if you get into email exchanges like that, and they're subject to prior notice, which is kind of crazy. Yes, we're giving 24 hours notice that tomorrow we're going to have an email exchange. Obviously that doesn't, happen because people don't anticipate that happening. But I did make reference to it, so I just kind of want to come back and clarify it that although communication is key, obviously, you have to sometimes be careful that if you send an email to the whole group, that if someone's responding, they should only respond to the person who sent it. Because if you respond to everyone, you now, into the FOIC's eyes, at a public meeting. So that's just what I'm referring to.
Attorney McKeon?
Yes.
I just want to let you know that Dr. Lucera also has a question for you, I believe.
Okay.
Dr. Lucera?
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I couldn't tell who was speaking, but I just wanted to kind of clarify some things and just correct me if I'm wrong. The person was bringing up several we the council in terms of inviting speakers and setting the agenda and the time for the public to be heard, and I didn't get them all down. But I don't believe we ever voted on any of those things. And I always want to be careful of what an individual person asked for, which one of them was me. So I readily admit that I was the person who asked for how do we set the agenda, because I don't think that there's a structure around it. But I don't think we voted on any of these things. So I don't want it described as we as a council decided this and someone didn't do it. I think individual members were kind of asking these questions. So I just want it to be, I want to understand it from a legal point of view related to things that have officially been voted on and no one has done. They haven't put the council's wishes into effect or proceeded with them as we've directed them to, versus individual people bringing up stuff during a meeting and we've never really. And I honestly don't even understand, and I haven't been on the council very long, the structure around how one would actually do that.
Are you, Dr. Lucero, are you talking with respect to setting an agenda or just matters that are discussed in the course of a council meeting, or?
I'm just saying whoever was speaking, in my opinion, was describing it as things that the council had asked for. Well, we were individual people asking for things. I don't think that we as a council have asked for any of those things in terms of a vote or anything like that. Maybe I'm incorrect. And again, I've not been on the council that long. Maybe it was done before I joined.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a really interesting point because, as you know, as a public body, as a public, meeting, you have to set the agenda to the Freedom of Information Act. You have to post it, at least 24 hours in advance. So you really then have to stick pretty much to the agenda. Because if you start raising other issues, people say, well, this is a violation of the FOIA because you didn't give us notice, us being public, you didn't give us notice that you're going to be discussing these other things. So it really all comes back to the agenda. Now, the agenda is essentially, I would say, I don't know how it works here. So if I'm misstating it, I apologize. Again, as you know, I haven't been part of these meetings. But typically the agenda, I would think, would be set by the center, which would be Melissa. And I don't know if that's in consultation with the rest of the council or not. But once that agenda is set, that pretty much delineates the parameters of the agenda. Now, if it's a regular scheduled meeting and 2/3 of the council members vote to amend the agenda, that's permissible. But if it's a special meeting, no, it's that. Now I'm trying to get to the weeds. I apologize. But if it's a regular meeting, amendments to the agenda are permissible by 2/3 vote. But typically the agenda is set ahead of time. It's posted so people know what's going on. Now, I talked before about public comment. That doesn't mean that's not to say the public cannot be invited into the meeting. I was just talking about the comment part of it. This is a public meeting. It's open to the public. So, so the public, there may be members of the public who say, oh, hey, I looked on the website. This is the agenda. I'd be really interested to hear what the council is going to be discussing on, let's say, implementation, successes, and challenges. I see that's on today's agenda. And so, but if you start straying into other things that aren't on the agenda, then you're setting yourself up for an FOI complaint. I don't know if I answered your question, but, typically, the agenda is the guidepost by which the meeting has to proceed. But once it is on the agenda, again, things can become like this guest speaker request form. That can become something of an action item, and you can obviously vote on it, decide what you want to do. Yeah, Fran.
So I have a question. I totally understand the concept of advisory, and God knows I've been on a lot of advisory boards, but something in the overview, it just confuses me constantly, because if you read the overview, number 2, part C says, the activities of the center shall be informed by the Reading Leadership Implementation Council.
Right.
Informing the activities of the center sounds like different from advisory. And also, the Reading Leadership Implementation Council shall develop and publish annual goals for the center. That does not sound like advisory. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's where I have confusion on what is, and by the way, so do the members that I represent have confusion on, so what's your role on the council? And when you read that, it sounds like far more than advisory.
Right, Fran. I know that. I see that language as well, obviously. In fact, I've highlighted some of it. Well, the activities of the center shall be informed by the Reading Leadership Implementation Council. So essentially, I see that as kind of a safeguard in that there is this duty to consult with the council members. And the center cannot just totally disregard this consultation. And to that extent, actions, the council or the activities of the center shall be informed by the Reading Leadership Implementation Council. Now, this really gets into this kind of interesting, maybe from a legal perspective, maybe kind of tedious from anybody else's, but subsection B talks about the center, blah, 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 shall be under the direction of a director who shall be responsible for 1, overseeing all activities of the center. So the legislation clearly vests in the director, who's Melissa, obviously, the obligation to oversee all activities of the center. So when you read that in conjunction with the activities of the center shall be informed by the Reading Leadership Implementation Council, I read that as being a reiteration of the consultative process, that the Reading Council, the center is to consult with the council. And their input, their consultative opinions, advice, what have you, is to play a role in informing the activities of the center. But at the end of the day, it is the director who's responsible for overseeing all the activities of the center. So ultimately, the CSBE, by way of the director, has the responsibility of overseeing the activities. But in doing so, the center cannot just shrug off or ignore what the council has to say. The consultative advice given by the council. I think that's because, when you read statutes, courts have it's well established in statutory interpretation by the courts that you have to read statutory language in concert with one another. So you have to reconcile it. And really, that's the way I think that's best reconciled, those two provisions. But you are right. I mean, it then does go on to give the council, which Melissa is a member, a directive that you shall develop and publish annual goals for the center and meet at least once every 2 months. So that is an actual directive that is to be undertaken by the council.
Which we did undertake.
Okay,
So
well, there
we
you go.
had a strategy, but we had the center plan. It was decided by the council that a smaller group would actually create the plan. And then we sent it out, and then at the meeting, it was gone over and voted on and decided that the plan would move forward to the commissioner's office. And that was something I was going to actually share in the updates at the end, during the, I forget the name of it, the good of the order part, was that the plan, which is the center goals for years on out, is actually almost complete. So it's in its second iteration with our communications department, where they added the graphics, they made it look beautiful. So as soon as when it's final, we'll be sharing it with all of you. So thank you so much for the work on that.
Is it annual? Melissa, it says annual.
Well, in that plan, what you all did was you broke it down by year as to what different things would happen. And then we also have annual goals that the council came up with. So we actually went kind of above what we were doing. We made goals not only for the council, but then also for the actual center. I was thinking about if I could show you, but I can't connect right now and it's not on the agenda. So I could do that the next meeting. And like I said, when it's final, send it to all of you. So you can see how beautiful it is. I mean, it really worked out well.
Who's in the subgroup that did that?
It was over the summer. I think you were too, right? Wasn't it? Let me look.
Melissa Jenkins.
I know it was Dr. Coyne. I know I thanked everybody. Let me look for that.
And while you're looking that up, I just want to put in the record that inform, definition of inform is to give a formative principle or quality to something. So that, to me, seems a little bit more than just consulting. It's like giving information, and they use the example of a citizen is informed by a democratic ideal. So I don't know, just want to put that on the record that inform is a much stronger word than
Advice.
or
And
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I saw that definition, with dictionary as well, but there's also lesser.
Sorry, real quick, I don't
I know,
mean
I
to
was gonna say
interrupt.
that.
We're just 4 minutes over. Ellen, I don't know if you want to table this or if you want to continue.
Well, I do have a suggestion. So thank you, Kati, for paying attention to our time frame. Sometimes the clarification and certainly the valuable discussion we're having, thank you, Attorney McCann, for being here and giving us this deep dive into the language of the legislation. Sometimes acting on that is a helpful task and may be helpful to this group, which is why our next part of this, after Melissa just reviews quickly the slides that you've prepared already, when we have that discussion and we give tangible feedback from our constituents and we talk about the successes, we talk about the challenges. I think that advisory and that informing the work of the council, all of those activities will help us to see what it looks like. So it's helpful to know where we're going, but how we get there is even more important. So I do look forward in the next section of our meeting to hear from the council members the successes and challenges. And perhaps that regular activity will increase the communication feedback from the field to the center.
Before we move on, please, I have a really important question that we've never set a chair of our council. And we've also never, we only do Robert's rules for our minutes. We don't actually vote. Maybe we should be voting because I think it would be more final or it would show more determination on actually where we expect the actions of the council to, or the actions of the center to go.
And we're doing that
I'm
today,
gonna just,
based on,
yes,
yeah,
What's that?
It's on the agenda.
yeah, it's on the agenda for today. We sent all of the documents for you to review so we could have that conversation. Because we've been having that conversation across a couple of our meetings now.
Okay.
So today we really want to get to a resolution around the Roberts rules, the consensus. Are we going to keep the Roberts rules for the minutes? Are we not going to do that? So that was on the agenda for today to finalize.
Okay, and then would you recommend that we have a chair? Someone who,
I would think chair would probably be the director, but I'm sorry, but I thought it was going to be about 10, 15 minutes. I have another meeting I'm late for it.
Thank you for your time. It was appreciated. Once again, I mean, this came from all of you. You had some questions that I couldn't honestly answer, nor could we. So that's why we brought you in. So thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Sorry for talking so much.
No, it was appreciated. So
Dr. Hickey, if I could just
yeah, go
continue
ahead.
the
I was going to turn
conversation
it back to
here.
you, Dr. Schultz.
Yep, thank you. So that we could move forward with your slides and move very quickly through them so that we get to successes and challenges. Kati, I also want to recognize that Dr. Stephanie Lockhart, welcome Stephanie to the meeting. Glad to see you and that you have entered the meeting probably a good 20 minutes ago. So Dr. Hickey, if you could just share the slides. This is just a reminder, kind of a refresher. And if we can just keep that at 2 to 3 minutes so we have plenty of time to share from the council members our implementation successes and challenges.
You can go through. You can advance, please. All right, so just a reminder, the council norms as we do at every meeting, the equitable participation, the active listening, and the respect for all perspectives. So thank you for that. The Reading Leadership Implementation Council goals, as we referenced, every year we have created goals and move forward. One of our first goals was around the strategy, which we completed. And then we said we'd like to build upon that to make it actually a larger strategy, to review research and analyze what are successful strategies and bringing those forward not only as a group, but individually, and evaluate and identify the supports and communicate and support the activities of the center. So Dr. Schultz, turning it over to you.
Thank you. The members who are virtual did not see your slides, but I'm thinking you have up the slide that has successes and challenges listed.
Correct.
As the
Well, we
header?
did, yes, yes.
Okay, good, good. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to dig deeper into the actual work, knowing that what you say today certainly will inform and advise the work and be very helpful to the entire council. What's going on in the field that is working, and what are some of the challenges that are experienced that have been reported to you directly. So let's start with the successes. Thank you. And if either
Do you see
Kathy
that,
or
Dr. Schultz?
yes, yes,
Okay, we're all set now.
excellent. Okay, so
All right.
let's begin with successes. Please note that Dr. Hickey, you'll be calling on members who are in person, and I will be calling on the 1, 2, 3, 4 members who are virtual along with me, 5 members, including Thomas.
Okay, thank you. So anyone here have any successes that you want to share?
Ask a quick clarifying question.
Yes.
Is this successes for the center?
No, this is for implementation. So just around the implementation of the programs and the curriculum, because as part of our legislative responsibilities, it is to, I just want to read it right from legislation. So, hang on 1 second, please. I'll read it right from the legislation. The Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success, in consultation with the Reading Leadership Implementation Council, established pursuant to Section 1014 GG of the General Statutes, as amended by this Act, shall review issues related to the implementation of a comprehensive reading curriculum model or program pursuant to Section 10-14 HH of the General Statutes, as amended by this Act. So that's something that we had discussed at prior meetings. I'd shown the slides and talked about our responsibilities. Such review shall include the provision of technical assistance to those local and regional boards of education that have been denied a waiver from the provisions of the subsection, which once again goes back to the slides I was sharing about the professional learning and the coaching and the potential what's upcoming as we're working on the contracts for the upcoming supports there. An examination of the impact of the Science of Reading Masterclass, which once again was working with, we have a contract with CCERC, and they're doing the research around that for us. And then upon completion of the Department of Education's independent impact evaluation, a determination of how to scale for use to develop educators who are ready and able to support individual student learning in the science of reading. So it came from the council. You know, we've been over the last few minutes trying to have the conversations around this, and as members, you're hearing from the field, right, about this implementation. So it's really talking about the provision of technical assistance to those who have been denied a waiver, an examination of the impact of the Science of Reading Masterclass, and then, like I said, the impact evaluation will be used. So implementation successes and challenges. And because we have the PowerPoint up, we can't see those who are virtually joining us.
Melissa,
I do have some, yep.
I can see if any of our virtual members are raising their hand.
Okay, thank you.
Are we still on successes, or it could be either or?
Successes.
Okay. I've heard nothing but positive about.
You don't need to put names.
Oh, okay.
Just the, yeah, thanks.
Masterclass?
Yes, SOR Masterclass.
I can actually.
Say that, but it would be self-serving.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I can piggyback off of that and give some numbers that we shared with some of the legislators quite recently. We have 34 district teams that have participated in the masterclass so far. We have 500 educators participating in ReadCon. These are all no cost to districts. We have 129 district teams participating in the ARPA Right to Read professional learning. That's once a month, and I know I presented on this, so I apologize, but I do want to capture it. Yep. And the Hill for Literacy supports, we had talked about, we have 14 districts. We went to the waiver districts first, obviously, asking if they wanted support with choosing and then implementing some of the programs. So we have 14 districts who signed up for that. And we are so close to finalizing a contract with TNTP to move forward with more districts and support there. And then, of course, we have the Connecticut Literacy Model, which is focused on alliance districts, and that's 76 schools. So we have a lot of successes in that. We're having a lot of professional learning being provided.
Thank you, Dr. Hickey, for those. Just for clarification, before I call on first Dr. Margie Gillis and secondly Dr. Lockhart, that TNTP
And then we have Dr.
is the
Coyne
new-
too, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
And that TNTP does stand for the New Teacher Project, just so
No,
that
it
everyone
just stands
is
for
clear.
TNTP. We had that question at a previous meeting. It just stands for TNTP. It's kind of
Okay.
like with ag, how they changed. It's just TNTP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Gillis, would you like to share a success?
I think a success that's worth noting is that districts have really approached the center, Melissa and her staff, and then the team that supports all of them, in the sense that they've really asked for guidance. And more districts have come to the center looking for guidance and acknowledging the fact that this process is, complex, that the process being the selection of a core reading program, thinking about the implementation. And I feel like they've really been open to guidance from the center.
Thank you. And Dr. Lockhart?
I think that, and I know I'm not going to say this very eloquently, but it is nice to finally see some mandating of like real true equity work. And I think I can see across many districts, folks really having serious conversations about the science of reading, and not just good reading programs that they like or reading programs that they've always been using, but really reading programs that actually focus on teaching young children to read by a certain age. So yeah, I don't know how to really sum that up so eloquently, but I know, especially in my district, like we have had like really serious conversations about what it means to read and the best ways to teach reading and how to intervene for students who really aren't reading on grade level. And so I think this legislation really pushed that conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. And Dr. O'Coin, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that the different types of professional learning opportunities that the center has offered feels like gives a lot of different entry points to schools and districts, but meeting them where they are. And I think the number of schools and districts and teachers that have accessed those different supports shows that those have been the right kinds of supports, because obviously schools and districts are taking advantage of those different options and the ones that are the best fit for them.
And then I'd like to piggyback off what some people were saying. I think it was you, Margie, about not only contacting the center, but contacting each other. We've seen and heard
from districts about how they're actually coming together in this process. So looking at what each other are looking at, going into classrooms and observing data teams, observing teaching, coming together. There's a group around L that I know I've mentioned before, and how these districts have come together talking about their implementation processes, which I think is really neat, that we have all these different districts coming together across the state, districts who wouldn't have talked to each other before really, or really been in each other's orbit because they're outside of each other's rest area, are really coming together around conversations there. We've also had 15 districts so far volunteer to do webinars. So we have 15 districts we're going to be highlighting or showcasing, and they're going to be talking about their journey. And through some of these, they've talked about how kids' performance has actually improved as a result. Their interest has gone up, their abilities have improved. Teachers talk about how they now have materials they can access that are right in front of them, and how they find the materials are very helpful to their instruction. Now we're talking fast.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hickey. Just being mindful of our time frame here, we're going to, of course, listen to challenges that have come to your attention from your constituents. And Dr. Hickey, again, if you would acknowledge in-person members.
Sure, Dr. Brummett has her hand up.
So I've heard from numerous superintendents, so I'm going to be speaking on their behalf. Many have stated the programs, if they've adopted a program, it's extraordinarily complex and difficult to use, and they're only able to implement it partially. And that what makes me wonder if folks are only doing things partially, how do we measure success or determine if it's successful? And that many districts are asking, how will the state determine if this initiative is successful? Like, when is the expectation that the achievement gap will close? But essentially what that question is or wonder or concern is, how do we know this is working for kids? I was a little bit confused by the comment made by one of the online folks about equity, because as someone who's looking at several programs right now, we're not finding that in them. So, and many of them are the published critiques of them speak to that as well. So that is a worry of mine, and many districts who are increasingly ML. So those are concerns I'm hearing from multiple superintendents. Wondering too about adding new programs down the road, or when cultural misrepresentations have been observed in some of the things they've looked at. They're a little bothered by that constant. No, I got a little more. They're a little bothered by the constant referral to tutors, because there's no hard data on that, about that districts that have good performance have tutors. That doesn't gel with what they know. And this is a very important one too. If districts cannot afford the programs, even with the Right to Read grant, what do they do? We're doing our own search, and they're $500,000 plus, and the Right to Read grant only covers a fraction of that. And not to beat a dead horse, but many districts are still feeling like their waiver was not properly read or critiqued. I recently had a conversation with Charlie, who said I should have sent books in, and that would have made my waiver stronger. But yet the waiver process seemed to be nothing more than links. And certainly that's when I was involved in that initial process. It was nothing more than links and hard copies, not books. So that was a very frustrating conversation. So several districts are still calling for some sort of audit process that would get at unclarity or disclarity around the waivers, and feeling like their programs really weren't looked at, especially if they weren't reviewed by recently ed reports or others. I think that I don't want to take too much time, but that's some key elements that I'm hearing from my stakeholders.
So just, I am typing it here. You can't see it there, but she is also writing them here. So what I have so far
complex partial implementation. How do we know it's working for kids? Not finding equity in the programs and ML, wondering if adding new programs, and wonder when. You had talked about some cultural, what was the word? Representation. Tutors, I don't know how that has to do with the implementation, but I wrote down tutors. Funding, and the waiver was not properly read or critiqued, audit process and programs weren't looked at. And just a reminder, I know that we went over the myths and the facts, but you might want to go back to those two to see.
I have.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna go with.
Thank you, Dr.
Angel. Oh, sorry.
Stephanie.
Thank you, Dr. Hickey.
That,
I'm glad that
She
you
might not-
are taking some notes here for the challenges because they did not appear on the screen for us who are virtual.
Right.
We do have Ms. Bianca
you shouldn't.
Rivera who has a question or a comment.
Not a question. In the challenges that were mentioned, I've been an MLL teacher for 25 years in urban areas like Bridgeport with 29 students in front of me. And I'm very happy with the implementation and the requirement of the Common Core or the pre-selected programs. I do feel that every time we've purchased a new program as a teacher in the classroom, what we get is the 2-hour training from the company that sold us the program, and that is not enough for implementation. What districts need to look into to address this, because those core programs do in fact meet many of the needs of your MLLs, but teachers
No,
teachers need to be trained in these, and districts need to look into that. I know organizations now like Hill for Literacy are rolling out teacher trainings for implementation of these core programs, and those kind of supports in districts will tremendously help teachers, because it's like being thrown a buffet of 500 items, and as the teacher you need to pick the 6 items in that core program that are going to help meet the needs of your students. And to address that challenge, if districts have the ongoing professional development for their teachers, that would greatly improve the effectiveness of the program.
Thank you,
So
Ms. Rivera.
training for implementation and ongoing professional learning. Is that a summary? Would be the
Correct.
challenge? Okay, thanks. Fran has her hand up on this side.
I'm sorry, I have a couple of issues. Number one, it's really hard to have a meeting when you can't see the people online. And
We can just take that down.
I'm
then.
wondering who made those comments? Was that Bianca? Was that
Hi,
Bianca?
Fran. Hi, Fran. Yes,
Hello,
that's
Bianca.
me.
Bianca, are you teaching now in Fairfield?
Nope, I left Fairfield.
Oh, where are you teaching?
I am consulting for Hill for Literacy, and I am in the process of returning to Bridgeport as a 2nd grade bilingual teacher for the fall.
All right, question, or a challenge for me. I continue to have a challenge, and I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to continue it. The difference between curriculum and program. And I have, been reviewing these programs, and I don't see like standards powered. To know what one is more important than the other. And as I see the programs and I see the lessons, it appears in many, at least, that there are more lessons than days in the school year. And if you have a curriculum and you want to know what kids need to know and be able to do by the end of the year, and if you're going with every single lesson in these programs, how do you ascertain that kids have learned what the curriculum needs to be at the end of the year?
Absolutely.
As you know, I continue to say that it should be programs should be resources that complement the curriculum. And a curriculum should clearly lay out what it is that a first grader needs to know and be able to do, second grader, et cetera. And I'm not sure that the programs do that.
So how would I capture that as an implementation challenge?
I think
That they need implementation support or?
I would say, define the difference between curriculum and program.
So districts are struggling still to
Yes.
understand what curriculum is and what program is?
I think
So
that
maybe-
we're all struggling.
Okay,
We are all to define the difference between curriculum and program, and it appears that the center equates curriculum and program, and that's a challenge.
I think I did hear you say that about getting the curriculum or the programs provided take more than a year to implement. My team that's reviewing them right next to my office says the same thing. When they look at the scope and sequence, there's no way to do it in the allotted time for literacy. And I'm hearing everything they discussed, because my walls are paper thin. And I thought I heard you say that as well, Fran, just based on your review of some of the programs.
Yeah, I have no problem with programs, trust me. I taught kids to read using programs, but I worry about the program defining or being the defining factor in curriculum.
I think as we
And
match
I
the,
haven't seen the difference. I haven't seen us as a council or as a center clearly define the difference between curriculum and program.
we did. I brought it up a couple times. You guys, we all decided on the definition and we did bring it up in previous meetings. We can talk about it next time and I can show you all the different meetings we discussed in. But we did define that and we did set it out. And we even went so far to say like which on the list are programs and which are curriculum. And then with the compendiums, the reason that they're put together is because they do make that more well-rounded curriculum versus just a program that you're putting in place and doing what like Bianca was kind of referencing, I think, of using a whole bunch of different programs and having this, what'd you call it, like a smorgasbord, or what did you call it, Bianca? I thought of food.
a buffet. So even when you have a
Buffet,
program like Wonders, I totally agree that you cannot implement it in the 180 school year days. However, with the proper training, and I've seen this because my students have grown 2 years and 1 academic year every year I've taught, because with training as the expert, you're looking at that buffet and purposely pulling the important points for each individual child that will help them meet those reading goals. So yes, they're always going to give you, they're selling you a product. So these programs have given you something. It's up to the district and your coaches and your teachers to become the expert of that program and pull. But going to Lockhart's point, I appreciated that equity piece where we're making sure that students in districts that are high poverty, like Bridgeport and your Hartfords and New Havens and Waterbury, have access to a high quality core program.
So Bianca, let me just ask you on that one item, please. In your opinion, the program is the curriculum?
Bianca, real quick, we just have, I'll give you 1 minute. I don't know if Ellen wants to give you 1 minute because we started later. So we're
Yes,
at
no
2:04,
problem.
but
Yep, no problem. No, they're not the same, Fran. Your district provides you, the program is a resource. I agree with you 100%. You have your scope and sequence that districts, they give you your curriculum. I match up if I go back to Bridgeport, I'm matching up the curriculum that comes from the literacy department with the Common Core standards, and then using my program as that resource to seek what I can pull from that core program of Wonders to implement everything that's on my district's scope and sequence, and additionally addressing the needs of my MLLs. So it's not just.
We're saying the same thing. Fine.
Okay, yes, I agree. I think we are saying the same thing. Yes.
And I'm going to just jump in here because I think this is a very thoughtful conversation. This is digging deeply into the work of the council to understand the terms used in public education and certainly in reading. Dr. Lockhart, I see that you have a comment in the chat, and if you wouldn't mind reading your comment instead of me reading it for you on behalf of the council members who are in person.
Yeah, I was just responding to the statement about being confused by my comment on equity. And so I just wanted to clarify that what I meant by that comment wasn't necessarily talking about specific programs, but just the fact that we were now being forced to recognize the fact that in many communities of color, students aren't able to read by third grade, which is that critical year, and nothing has been done about it. It's just glossed over. So the fact that this council and this legislation is really forcing that conversation around what happens when students can't read at that grade level.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart, and thank you everyone for engaging in this discussion. We will certainly have this as an agenda item going forward. We certainly see the value in this, and then we'll look at your comments and challenges and perhaps propose an area of challenge that we can.
So let me. So we have others. I think we need to continue this conversation, obviously, the next time, because Lisa and Kim wanted to have an opportunity to speak as well.
Yeah, wait, I can be 30 seconds. I just have a list.
Just as a reminder, you'll notice the change in the agenda because it was a request to put times so that we got to every single agenda item. So
You're right.
that's why we are putting these hard stops on these topics, because that was a request of the council to ensure we can get through the agenda. So that's just a reminder.
Thanks, I forgot about that, you're right.
I think we should, I feel comfortable saying a few things quickly. The comments I'm hearing are expense. I know one district is looking at deciding between two programs. One's 300,000, one's 1.2 million. I've asked for data to support the added programs that were done by PCG. I have not seen anything that, at least advises us or shows us that they are as good as the ones that we decided on back in 2022. I think it'd be really helpful for us to know what programs all the districts in our state are using. Like someone mentioned, some people are having really good successes. We should know who those towns are, those districts are, so we can talk to them, because I would really love to, as you know, I live in Fairfield County.
That'd be great.
We have had nothing but, bad feelings towards the whole process. And so I would really like to hear that there are some districts that are happy with what they're using and, and that they're finding success. I think it's really important that we define what success looks like going forward, because we know that actual success, being reading scores, was not used in determining who got a waiver, who didn't. And I struggle the most with that, being the determination. And then the waivers decisions, the different levels of waiver decisions, we were never informed about them in advance. And I have yet to see anything that defined why there were multiple levels, what determined who got what. And I think the last thing I'll say is that I really believe that we should have the opportunity to audit some of the decisions. We've had districts come to us that said that, they provided things after the fact and they were told that they were not allowed to be included. And if those things would have changed the waiver decision, I think we really owe it to every district to not have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in programs and teacher training and everything else, if what they're doing now is meeting the objectives of the law.
Thank you. And did we have one other comment? I see a hand raised, but I can't see who it is. Dr. Hickey?
Lisa.
Can you?
Hi, Thomas. I think that there are two aspects of the conversation today that need to be addressed in different ways. One is the conversation about reading and literacy. And how districts, teachers, the center are feeling about what has been put forward. The other conversation is around logistics. And again, I don't know who's responsible for which piece of these things. I still don't have clarity. So the logistics piece is the sense on the part of more than a few districts that they were not treated equitably in the waiver process. I received feedback from several different districts about that. Districts that were told not to submit certain pieces of curriculum because there's no way it would be approved, yet then those programs appeared in compendia. So that was a very difficult thing for those districts to see happen. I received feedback that some of the programs on the approved list are very reliant on computers. And so the concern that was expressed to me was that there aren't enough actual books in the hands of children, especially, which is especially important in under-resourced communities where children might not be going home to books. And that came to me from somebody who is the district coordinator for reading in an Alliance district. And I think that the issues of cost are not something that I've come to understand, not something that this center can manage, because apparently it is not our job to advocate for making this possible to happen in districts. I wish it was our job to be that advocate, but I'm being told we are not those advocates. But I can tell you, I am that chair of a town council. And I can tell you right now that my board of ed is about to be cut $500,000. And one of the hot topics at their last board of ed meeting was, how are we funding all these things? Well, we're going to buy these literacy materials because we have to, but we're cutting our reading interventionists. They're not going to be here. We're not going to have the district-wide coach. We're not going to have the, because you have to make choices, right? And when there's a mandate to have something, you better buy it. And you send whatever staff you have left to go. But I'm sitting here telling you the reality. I'm not making this up because it's my job. I have to sit at that council table and work with my council and make decisions about what we can get passed in our community. And it's going to fail. It's going to fail on May 7th. We're going to have to cut more. And then I have to go back to my board of ed chair and my superintendent and say, you got to find another $300,000. And that's stacked. So I know that that's not our job, but I have from day one sat at this table and said, we need to be advocates. And I'm very happy that this group was able to get an extension of the time. It's great there are ARPA dollars to sort of help. That's another fiscal cliff. In case you haven't noticed what's happening around the state, my neighbors in Tolland are losing 11 positions. Hartford is losing hundreds of positions. This is not okay, and this is not, absolutely not, what it means to have readers. Because the people we're going to lose are the people who are not the mandated people. We got to keep our first grade teachers. We got to keep our second grade teachers. We don't have to keep our district coordinators. We don't have to keep our coaches. That's who we're losing, and our social workers. So I'm just going to say that one more time, and I won't bring it up again. The slide that was being worked on with challenge, successes and challenges, that I assume will be attached to the minutes or somehow available. I think there's a lot that the public doesn't learn about these meetings because the minutes often don't reflect it. And the only way to get that information is to figure out how to find the video of the meetings, which now has gotten a little bit easier, and sit and watch. So I've also got feedback from teachers who are saying, some of us are moving forward reluctantly because we don't know what to do. We were given $93,000, but any program is going to cost over $500,000. Last night, our town's Board of Finance reduced the board's budget request from 6.39% to 2.75%. If anyone thinks that next year they will fund this money for a new reading program, they don't know our Board of Finance, so we will need to cut positions. Some of those positions might be the people who teach our most at-risk learners. I have an invoice for the screener sitting in my office drawer because I'm afraid to spend the grant money because I don't know where we will end up. These are the things that are coming to me. People watch these meetings, they know who we are sitting at this table, and this is the feedback we're getting. And it's upsetting because we want kids to read. But in the process, and this is not Melissa's fault, it's not anybody's fault here. It's what happens when legislation gets passed and it's not thought through. And that is extremely problematic. And as a legislator myself, I get it. But hopefully it'll get fixed.
Well, and I have to say, I do appreciate everyone sharing these challenges and successes. What I can control, like Lisa said, this is legislation, and we do want to support our districts. So by listening to what you all have been sharing helps me in my role as director of what I can do to be supporting districts. I do have to say, Kim, if you have a request that you feel was not answered, then please email me. Sometimes we don't have the information you're asking for, so we can't provide it. But like the data, I'm not sure what you're asking for around data from PCG. But if
I asked for the rubrics, MDM's programs. Like, did they do a rubric to determine whether or not they fit our criteria? Like, how did PCG come up with those groupings?
Those came from districts. So when the districts submitted their waivers, they submitted those as a package.
So if I went back to the original applications,
you will see the package.
But they didn't meet our criteria because they
were seen individually, not as a compendium together. We worked with the superintendents. They wanted to see, as a result of the first review, they were saying to us, we want to see what else is out there. What can we be doing? When they put forward their materials, we could only review what was submitted. So when Dr. Brummett was mentioning the review process, we could only review what was submitted. We couldn't go out and buy things. So if a district mentioned they were using something, if it wasn't in their actual waiver, we couldn't go out and purchase those things to review. So we were relying on their waiver to drive those decisions. Waivers included those programs together. And by putting them together, it meets all the elements of the legislation, including that comprehensive piece.
So are there any, but there were no districts approved that did not have a purchased commercial program. Is that correct?
The majority of districts put forward programs. Some of them put forward as many as 15 or 30 programs.
You have to purchase them.
That was the choice the districts made, correct?
Okay. Well, the others may have used self-created programs.
There was perhaps one or two that did. The others, like West Hartford, also, they were approved. Wallingford was approved, but I do have to say they included programs as well as their curriculum. Now, West Hartford is one of those districts who wanted to share their journey. So they are ones that will be highlighted in the webinar series as well. So, yep. All right, so where are we on time? 2:18. Wow, we're already to the good of the order.
So I would like to take a few minutes first to acknowledge everyone's contribution to this very robust and meaningful discussion. And hopefully Dr. Hickey and Kathy, you've had an opportunity to record in writing some of the comments, which will help us to move forward, of course. I would like to take a few minutes just to open to the council members any discussion. We're not going to make any decision, I don't think, today with our waning minutes, but just any feedback on the articles for consensus decision making in terms of your understanding of the process. And then we can move quickly also to your input on the guest speaker request form. So let's start with consensus decision making. Any comments from the members?
Fran is coming back in the room. She's gonna say something, but so far no hands are raised to her.
Okay, then,
Do you want to say
Fran?
anything about the consensus?
Yes, please, if I could. Sorry about that. I
Good
had to take
timing.
that. So I thought, I don't know where the discussion has been, but I thought in the beginning that we had, agreed on consensus, that we would operate by consensus. I, just want to say that I've been part of the Education Evaluation Committee and the Certification Council, both of whom have operated by consensus, and we've done incredibly well. And the reason I say that is nothing came forward unless there was general agreement on it. And if someone had, I'll just give you the visual, because I was dismayed by getting a 42-page technical paper to read on consensus, when I think sometimes we overcomplicate things and we need to keep it simple. And the visual that, Melissa passed out in the beginning that we used in the evaluation, the council, whatever, it was so simple. Do you know what I mean? You fully agree, you have some reservations, you need more information, you don't like it, but you'll support it. And number 5, I can't live with it. And anything that we could not live with, either on the Educator Evaluation Committee or on the council, when we couldn't agree, if there was a person that couldn't agree with it and we could talk to that person, and if they absolutely did not agree, it didn't move forward. I might add, we use the same thing. Just lately, I co-chair the statewide task force on special ed, which is a group that has many different perspectives, just like this group. And when there were 5s, we just did not move those things forward when those people weren't convinced. So I love the process. I think it's a simple process. I don't see it interfering with Robert's rules on the minutes, but maybe I'm wrong. I just, it brings a group together. And frankly, I think, we need to accept the fact that on this council, we have many different perspectives, but that's what makes the world go round. It's wonderful to have different perspectives and hear from different people. And it makes the things that we, I guess we advise, when we advise, it makes it stronger because it comes from all of us. So I'm just making a case for it, rather than voting.
So,
Has her hand up.
yeah, I have my hand. So I'm just curious, how will that be recorded in the minutes then? It won't be a vote, but it will just say we came out with consensus. Okay.
Yes, the council reached consensus on, let's say it's the goals or something like that, or, whatever, wherever we're going, or we reach consensus on meeting in person. And, God knows if you want to continue to have the hybrid meetings, it's all right with me, but they're really hard, I think, to have everyone together to talk and really discuss things, but I'm old fashioned. But I would say to you that, that's what I would really push for this group.
Thank you, Fran. Any other comments before we move to the guest speaker request form draft? Thank you, and I can certainly agree with this and live with this model. So, like the form. Let's move to the guest speaker request form.
Dr. Stolz, just to clarify, so does that mean we're moving forward with continuing to use the consensus model, but using Robert's rules for the minutes?
Correct, that's my understanding.
Are we reaching consensus on that? All right, and then just to clarify with the minutes, we have gone to the full Robert's rules, which means names are not in there. They are a little bit more sparse, but that's I mean, that's what Robert's Rules says. So we're doing the Robert's Rules and Patsy goes back to each meeting. So Mrs. Rivera listens to it over and over and over again to ensure that she is recording exactly what was said or done. We're not going to be doing intent. We're going to be capturing what was actually said, but then not recording the people. And so we wouldn't be doing like a vote either. So-and-so voted for this, so-and-so voted for that. It would be the council consensus, correct? Okay, yes.
So the question, the reason that I raised Robert's Rules minutes was because things that I was saying in meetings were not being memorialized. And so I started submitting my comments in writing and requesting that they be attached to the minutes. So my goal is simply to make sure that comments from members of this council are not lost. And in that particular situation, and I'm not going to remember exactly what was said, but my frustration was that I brought up, and it was when we tried to have our first in-person meeting, or maybe it was the one before, I don't, but I brought up that I didn't see my comments, and I believe your response, Melissa, was to ask everybody if it was okay for my comments to be reflected in the minutes. That was offensive to me. Because I made those comments, I made them as part of the council, and I felt that they shouldn't vanish into thin air. And I think that's where the Robert's Rules came out of. My intent was not to have less information available. My intent was to have more information available.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings at all. That was not my intent. I was trying to adhere to the consensus model of asking others if it was okay to include what you said specifically versus just capturing kind of the whole.
But
How
is the fact that I said anything didn't exist.
I don't understand. I'm sorry.
No, with absolutely no record, no mention that I had raised a concern. So I mean, if a consensus model means that the council could decide they don't want something a member says reflected.
The thing was at that point in time.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it was at that point of time. So
Right.
if we're going forward with Robert's Rules, and per your explanation, description of the minutes.
It's a summary. It's not a word by word. Correct.
As long as
Right.
there is reference to it.
Correct. It won't say your name though. It'll just talk about a discussion or that's, like the broader, so that.
And just as a reminder, all of the meetings are recorded, so there is that video recording of the conversation and your messages and words. So it's not lost.
Right, right.
So with this discussion in mind, we do have 2 minutes left to our meeting, and I would like some feedback on the guest speaker request form for the council so that we can move forward with any members who are requesting a speaker.
It was attached. Yep.
I looked at it, I thought it was fine. I guess we just need, the only thing I would say is, do we come to consensus that we would like to approve somebody, or how do we?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So Dr. Stoltz, do you want to explain the process now that we've decided on consensus?
Yes, so from my understanding, as we look at this guest speaker request form, we will put it in a fillable PDF template for you and send it out. So if you do have any speakers in mind, you'll be able to fill in and complete the form, submit it, I would believe, to Dr. Hickey. And then we will need to come up with a way to ensure that we do and respond in a timely fashion for perhaps a subsequent meeting, having a speaker come for May or any of our meetings coming up. So we'll act on this on our part quickly to get you the template, and we'll take it from there with regard to the approval. So you see that that there are 5 elements here that need to be responded to ensure that we have a speaker that will invite, by example, questions during or after the presentation. And then I'm thinking that this will be a consensus decision of every council member to have the completed template in advance of a meeting, and then move forward with a guest speaker.
Dr. Coyne did have his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on the role of the council as consultative, and you sort of talked about that. So my sense of guest speakers is that if you, as the director of the center, are seeking advice or opinion about certain issues, that feels like a guest speaker would meet those goals. To me, that would be the mechanism that should trigger a guest speaker.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I'm not sure that it makes sense, given the role of the council, for council members to suggest outside speakers if they don't directly respond to the consultation that the center is asking from the council. I mean, I think we all have a lot of different opinions on this council, and it feels like guest speakers that are recommended by council are going to amplify certain members of the council, maybe not other members of the council. Feels like a guest speaker has to fulfill specific need for the center to get advice or opinion or additional information on tasks or one of the goals of the center. And we have very few meetings, and the time is already, we're already out of time for the things that we had. So I'll worry about guest speakers taking up a lot of the time of the council. And I know that the consensus process probably allows all those things to happen from this form. But I also feel like the form in some ways kind of makes it seem like it's part of the council's role to come up with guest speakers and to suggest guest speakers.
I would just say that I believe in the legislation. It clearly states that the council is allowed to bring in experts and people from the public to advise us. So I think it's important, and I think, like you just said, in a way, I mean, we all are going to bring different perspectives. And if we limit it to a certain, I mean, I just feel like we should, instead of talking about consensus building or whatever we talked about last month, which are professional development or whatever, we should have somebody into our meeting, probably every meeting, to give us a little bit of what's going on in reading throughout our state, throughout our country. I mean, that would benefit me, even if it's just a district, right? A district comes in and tells us some of their successes, or whoever your speaker was that I don't remember, or
how does that directly then benefit the needs of the center?
Well, benefits the council.
But the council is to benefit this.
Well, I think the more informed we are about what's going on, reading well makes us all more informed.
Not if it's not directly tied to a need of the center.
It's tied to the science of reading, though.
Well, I think
And I'd like to jump in
gets at that, and I think you bring forward the person, and I mean, the person I suggested is a researcher in the area of reading with a lot of expertise. So, and she's been speaking to superintendents in different groups. I can't imagine how that's not relevant to the work of this committee. I don't understand that.
Well, and just to clarify, the legislation says the Reading Leadership Implementation Council may consult with representatives from public, private, and philanthropic organizations. So it doesn't talk about speakers per se. It's much more about we may consult with them if we want. So I don't know, that's intriguing, Dr. Coyne. I appreciate you bringing that up. I hadn't looked at it in that way. And I know it's 2:34, we're late, we're over our time and someone else had to drop off.
I mean, it could be that the council meets separately, outside of a standard meeting, and we invite everybody to come to hear your speaker. If they're interested.
Or when your speaker comes somewhere, you can invite them, right? You can invite the council to say, hey, come and listen to the speaker. That's a good idea, something like that.
But then I think going back to what Mike had shared, if you're not present as.
It's not the council.
It's not a council meeting.
Right.
It's just a meeting.
Right, exactly.
Anyway,
Not if you're not there. We just have to invite you. You might not
Correct.
be in attendance.
Right, you
It
could
could be
invite the
absolutely.
entire council, but it couldn't be a meeting, but it's you inviting, and like, we could invite them to the masterclass. I think we did in the past. We said, hey, if any of you want to go to the masterclass, you're more than welcome to come. It's not a meeting, it's an invite to see the learning and the experiences there.
I will just add that as a member of, I can't even tell you how many committees and councils, having guest speakers is a very standard, normal thing. As long as it's relevant, you don't bring in someone that has nothing to do, but relevant to the work of the committee. I have no, it's just been something in my 35 years of doing this stuff that we've done.
I would add that when we convened the Remote Learning Commission, which we were a part of, we did reach consensus on the guest speakers that were attending to inform the legislative task.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I mean, on the Education Evaluation Committee, on the Certification Committee, we did bring in people to help us reach, and we did it by consensus. So people came in by consensus, and also for the Special Ed Task Force, we brought in a forum of superintendents to inform us a little bit better where we might want to go.
Again, the only thing I'm saying is this is a different commission because we're not making decisions about moving forward. We're providing consultations.
No, we weren't either. Mike, we weren't either. We were just bringing recommendations forward, but we were not making decisions.
Right.
And again,
On these
I do
first
think,
meeting.
I do think that your comments are all very well taken, and hence the reason for a form that has 5 considerations. And with those considerations in mind, that anybody that is submitting a form for a guest speaker, we will reach consensus as to whether that speaker will be identified as a guest speaker. So I think we can leave it at that. For the good of the order, we're going to defer to our next meeting as we are over time right now. So with that in mind, I appreciate your feedback. I'm sure that at least from my lens, this was a robust and meaningful conversation about the work that lies ahead and will inform our work going forward. So looking forward to our next meeting, May 21st, again, a hybrid. I plan to be there in person, so I look forward to being at the table with you, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stoltz.